We are not live, we are not live, but we are alive. Today, we are going to be mastering the art of some mindful stitching, and we're going to be bringing you creativity and peace. That's what we like to do in these tea time tutorials. We give you an exercise every single Friday where you can just de-stress, take time out from your busy schedule. It is so important for the noggin, for the mental health. Now, we always talk about mindfulness at the beginning and then we do the exercise. So I'm going to put the time code below so that you can head straight off to the mindful stitching if that's what you'd like to do with us. And what I would say is there are some of our exercises where you can pick it up in a minute or two, and people I know don't watch the rest of the video. This one, yes, you'll pick it up in a few seconds, the stitching, but we will be giving you tips along the way to make nice stitching patterns. But maybe try and stick with it. Just have it on in the background with us for 20 minutes to try it. It's like watching a fitness video. Watch it the whole way through and really work with us, because we are going to be doing the mindful stitching together. There's no befores and afters. So try doing it with us and give yourself that 20 minutes of peace. And we'll be chatting along as well. And we'd love, of course, to hear your comments. Do like the video if you can. It helps us get our content out there. Also, hit the subscribe button and the notifications, because then you'll know when we load our content, which we do every single Friday. So if you're heading off, we'll see you there in a minute. Oh, so this is our little bit of mindfulness. Now, I saw something on Instagram this week, and it was part of a TED Talk. If you've never heard of TED Talks, look them up, because you can get a TED Talk on quantum physics or breaking up with your boyfriend. I mean, there's everything you could possibly want on there. And some are really funny and some are really heartbreaking, but they offer great advice. A bit like our channel, really, Gary. We don't do the heartbreak, but we do the great advice. So this chap did a brilliant social experiment, and I thought, I've got to show you this. So he stood in front of the audience and he said to a girl, "Can I have your phone, please?" I don't know why he didn't use his. Maybe he wasn't allowed to take it on stage. At first she was like, "What?" And he was like, "Just turn it off. I'm not going to break it." She turned it off and she gave it to him. And he said, "Right, so guys, you know that this phone is off, which means I'm not going to be interacting with it. It's just a phone, right?" So he said, "But I want to talk to you about what phones are doing to our human connections and relationships." So he stood there and he said, "Right, so imagine that you come in and you go, 'Hey, Bill, can I have a word with you about that project?'" He said, "I'm your boss." And he said, "If I stand there and I go, 'Okay, so what can I do for you?'" He said, "How important do you feel in the meeting right now?" Because I've got this on my phone. So in my hand, rather. So he said, "So you probably think at any minute, if this rings, I'm going to take this call, or I'm in the middle of something, or I'm distracted, or this is more important than you." And he said, "Watch. So yeah, what can I do for you? Yeah, what can I do for you?" Which is the most, and he said, already you can feel that connectivity because I have put this down. And he said, likewise, he said, I had a friend, I went for lunch with him, and he put his phone face down because he said, I'm not going to interact with it. And then it rang and he picked it up, he went, "No, I'm not going to answer it." And he said, and I was like, "Oh, how humble of you. You're not going to answer that phone." He said, but also, the fact that he had picked up the phone. And I tried it with my friend recently, and I said to her, "I watched this great thing. Let's put the phone in the bags," because she really is she's always picking up her phone. And you know something, Gary? We had a wonderful 40 minutes, the best 40 minutes of conversation we have had in ages, because our phones were in our bags. However, her bag was on the table at one point. She heard it vibrating and she went, "I am going to have to look at that. I think it's my daughter." And then she got it out. It was her daughter, and then she had to leave, and it broke the thing. But we did have 40 minutes of brilliant conversation. And I just thought that was such a strong point to make. He's not even on the phone, but he's got it in his hand, and already he goes, "Who's more important, you or this?" Put our phones down.
It's so true. I mean, that is just such an amazing example and lovely. And that example of having the phone in your hand, and there's like three people in the room, isn't there? Three people in the room,
Exactly.
or potentially three. I just think that we're a generation that hasn't been taught how to really interact or how to use this technology. We learnt manners, how to sit at the table properly, how to eat with a knife and fork, how to say please and thank you. But really, the technology wasn't there when we were growing up, how to actually have manners with technology.
And it goes much deeper than that as well, because, there were a couple of things that I saw which were also very interesting. One was a life coach who said, so often, what's the first thing we do on a morning? We turn our phones on, and then what do? Start scrolling. And this person said, Would you invite, if you've got 10,000 followers, if you've got 365 followers, would you invite those people into your bedroom before you've even had a cup of tea and got yourself together? No, you wouldn't. So why are you interacting with them before you've done those things? Because already you're starting, it's the worm is going in the brain. And then there was another guy who was asked, he was a mental health consultant, and he was asked, why is mental health becoming more of an issue and people are struggling more and more? And he just held his phone and said, because of that. This is our problem. And he said, because everybody is on this, but as you just said, distracting you. But he said it's the social media as well. And, you know, it's like we're always talking about getting out into nature, you and I, Gary. And, you know, you see people, don't you, going out into nature. Wonderful. Sit by a lake, climb a tree, you walk wherever. But then you see them, you see their stories of them sitting next to the lake, concentrating on the lake and the tree and the adventure and all that. They're just concentrating on their phones and looking at themselves. And believe me, I've been, you know, heavy on the socials, and I've pulled back on my personal social media, because the final point I was going to make was talking about the distractions. There is a wonderful expert, a psychotherapist, Dr. Gabor, I'll put his name below. And he talks about addiction, and we always often blame addicts. Oh, he's addicted to that. He's a gambler. He's a drinker. And he says, what is addiction covering? It's covering pain. We become addicted to things to distract ourselves from our pain. And certainly with social media, we do, because we need validation. It's like so many of us like, oh, give me the likes, give me the attention, oh, validation, validation. And you know what? It means nothing, because our personal relationships, the way we talk to people, honest with people, communicate with people, care about people, love people, that is real. Not, I've got 78 likes on my picture of me next to the lake. So, you know, it's all tying in, isn't it?
And I must point out that hit of a like is the same as a puff of a cigarette. You know, as an ex-smoker, a generation that was encouraged to smoke, it was a social interaction. And in fact, you know, the repercussions of that was very bad for our health. We will find that the repercussions for working with technology and being on social media will be just the same. We need to know how to deal with this addiction. And so every like, I equate to like the puff on the cigarette. It's like, oh, that made me feel better. So every like makes you feel better for that moment, but you just want another like, another like. There's never one like for one post is never enough.
And it's internal validation. It's validation for yourself. When you do something creative, you are validating yourself. You're saying you're important enough to give yourself time and be by yourself. People who are always seeking external validation, and it becomes, you know, as you said, the puff of the cigarette, you know, it's like smokers, they think that the cigarette relaxes them. And somebody once said to me, well, no, it doesn't. It tops up their nicotine level, which stops them from getting stressed. But you don't need that nicotine. You know, it's the same thing, is that, and we see it with celebrities who become, you know, world superstars and have millions of things, and it becomes out of control. Their egos are out of control. They lose themselves, and then your mind is filled with this rubbish. And it's like, no, what you need to do is step back. The key word is healing. You have to heal your traumas, look at yourself. And I've done it for 4 years. And believe me, it is painful. You have to face things you've done, face things within yourself, face things within your family where it all started. You have to heal yourself. And you have to do that without any of this distraction.
Not easy. Not easy, Rachel.
It's not easy. But you could do some mindful stitching as well.
You could.
Nicely led in. Nicely led in.
Here I am.
It's so beautiful. So, but you don't have to do that.
No. So this is like, because, you know, we do doodling, mark making, painting, all of those things. This is an alternative with Stitch. So you can still, as you can see in this page, that I've just doodled marks, but I've done it with stitches. And in fact, you can download this. This is on the Crafty Monkies website to actually do this whole session, to make the whole book and everything. But today, we're just going to do this spiral, a really easy practice. And again, as always, I try and think of things that you've possibly got at home that you can use. So you can either use this is a piece of calico, could be a piece of, just a piece of cotton. It could be a bit of old tablecloth, tea towel. That's all you need, just a square to work in, because that's what you're going to really stitch into, I'm going to use this. There's a piece of felt here. Felt's quite nice because it's quite easy to stitch into, and also it doesn't fray too much. It's quite nice, and it shows up well on screen. Now I've threaded up 2 needles. I've got, and you don't have to have your 2 needles. You might only find one, and then you just change the thread. But this is just for demonstration purposes. I've got a thin piece of thread, a piece of black thread, and I've got a thicker piece of thread, so a piece of black thread, but it's thicker. Now, it doesn't have to be black. It could be white on a dark background. It could be 2 different colors. It doesn't have to be thick and thin. It could be 2 colors, and you're just going to create a spiral with those. I'm going to just put, I've got a single strand of thread, and I'm just going to put a little knot in the back of it just to start with. So I'm just going to knot the back like that, just a little knot. So a couple of little knots like that. I can just trim the end if I need to. And I'm going to start, as always, I'm going to start in the center. So I've got this square fabric, and I'm just going to bring the needle up from behind, and I'm just going to start in the center. Now, you might, I've just got to come through again. Don't pull it too hard because it will come all the way through. So just pull it so it just stops. Now, you could draw the spiral on and just follow the drawing, but I think quite nicely it's actually just the whole idea about a mindful doodle is that you just start to concentrate and you just start to think about what you're doing. So you're just going to do little running stitches, so maybe about ½ centimeter apart, or even less than that, maybe a couple of millimeters apart, and you're just going to do 1 stitch. You're just going in and out, and just going to start from the center. And you're going to start quite tight. So you're going to start in you're just going to sew in a tiny little circle to start with, like that. Just keep turning it. Just keep concentrating on getting your stitches nice and even apart. That's almost like a meditative practice. You know, just it's almost like when you get to breathe. You remember when we start to do a relaxation session, it always starts with breathing. It's the same thing. You're just evening out your brain waves, and you're just starting to think about the stitches have all got to be the same size, but also you've got to start radiating out. So you start to radiate out. So I'm going to just stop at that moment so you can see I've started in there in the middle and I'm radiating out. I'm not really close. I'm giving gap between. So there's a gap between, and I'm just going to keep going. So I'm just going to keep going round, but giving myself equal distance. So you're thinking equal distance of stitches, and equal distance as you keep going round in a spiral. So there's that equal distance all the way round. Now, don't get worried if it slightly goes wrong. Think, oh, that stitch isn't right. Don't start thinking I've got to unpick it. You just go with it. It's like all things in life. Well, not all actions that you take are going to be right. Some might be wrong, but you can't undo them. So you just keep going, and hopefully you don't redo that action another time.
Yes, I heard a great person talking about life and life's journey, and you know, you're basically going down a road, and there are roads to take, and you go left, right, whatever. And this person was saying, don't ever sit and ponder too long, because that's when we make mistakes. Just go, just choose a road, go down it. He said, and if you go down that road and you realize it's the wrong road, don't keep going, just turn around, come back, and then go down the other road.
Yes.
But that is so true in life, isn't it? And then don't sit there thinking, oh, I went around the wrong road. Doesn't matter. You went down the road and realized it wasn't right for you. Come back.
Exactly. How are you getting on with your stitching, Rachel? How are you doing?
Yes, I'm going to show you mine now. Do you know, this is actually a lot, nowhere near as fast as you. Let's have a look. Add spotlight. This is actually a lovely.
Oh, yes.
Yes, look.
Nice.
It's a lovely exercise to do, because the one thing I've had to learn in my life, another healing lesson that I've had to learn, is in the old tarot, it's called temperance, but it's patience. It's having that patience. And I'm a very impatient person when it comes to tasks. I always want everything done. You know, it's like, that's why I've struggled with my sort of artistic side, is because I always start things and then I want them done. You know, I mean, I was at the Festival of Quilts a couple of days ago, and I so admire these people who have made these quilts, and it's taken them, well, some of them, it can take them years, but a lot of them start making the quilt as soon as this quilt festival is over. And so it takes them 9 months to do the next one. And the amount of work and time and patience, but it is actually a great thing to learn. And this is a really lovely little exercise, because, you know why? Because I'm capable of doing it, Gary. There are lots of things that you might
Yes.
start and then you feel like, oh, I'm not very good at that, or I can't do that. Everybody can do this. It's a straight running stitch, but it's just teaching you to be patient and
Yes, it is.
not stress.
And it's in fact, you'll find this sort of stitching, this repetitive, even stitching in Japanese sashiko and
Yeah,
borrow
sashiko.
stitching.
I never know, yeah, how you say it, with sashiko or sashiko, but yeah.
Sashiko, yeah, and borrow stitching as well. And it's all about those even little stitches as a decorative stitch, but it is so meditative and it's so relaxing. You can sit there just stitching away. You know, you might be traveling somewhere. You know, how do you pass the time when you're traveling, when you sat as a passenger? We just get out a little bit, so just start stitching spirals. Just start stitching something that's nice and uncomplicated, and you could just stitch that on a piece of cloth.
And while you're doing that, you know, you'll find that you'll stop and you'll look out of the window, and then you'll go back to your stitching and you look out of the window. How many people now on trains look out of the windows? They don't, because everybody's looking at their smartphones.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like
that's so true. Yeah.
Russell James Barrett, one of my teachers here, but also an amazing quilter. He just won a prize, a first prize at the Festival of Quilts. He often on his Instagram will take, and it's only a quick picture. He's not sitting on his Instagram. He'll take a quick picture where showing his sewing on his knee, that he's sewing en route places.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, and he said whenever he gets on the train, he gets his sewing out, and he said he gets some very odd looks from people. They're like, "What?" Because I mean, Russell does not look like. People always say to me, "Oh, you work with quilters," and they imagine 85-year-old little old ladies. Nothing wrong with them. Fabulous. I've got a few on my classes, but Russell is like, he's got a tiny bit of hair at the bottom of his head. He's shaved the rest of his head. He's got little round glasses. He wears the most outrageous clothing, and he's just fabulous. And he sits there with his patchwork quilting, hand sewing, and people go, "Who are you?" But you know, he says he just finds it so meditative, and it's, you know, it's just really important for our mental health. It really, really
is. It is definitely. So I'm going to just bring this right up to camera so you can see. So I've just started off and I've just gone off in a spiral, and then I've just sort of like gone off over here. So I think that's probably about enough for the first lot of stitching. So it just can go over there like that. So this goes round. I'll show you how to just finish the back, or just the way if I finish the back. So you could put you could take the needle out and just knot it. But in fact, if you take the needle and you hold the one piece of the thread in your non-dominant hand, so that's for me is my left, and I've got my needle and thread in my right. So I'm just holding it. So I just go underneath and through. So I'm going around, through and through, and then I'm just making a knot. And I put my finger on the knot as I pull it tight, and I'll just do another one. So hold the loop in my hand, in my left hand, go through and under, pull it through, and then I can just knot it really close to the work, so I can just make it and just finish it off so it doesn't come undone. And then just give it a little trim like that. So that's the first one.
You know, just thinking there as well, I'll finish mine in a second now. I was just thinking there about social media and, you know, that whole thing of doing things and taking pictures of yourself. And don't get me wrong, you know, been there, done it a lot. But of late, I have stopped doing it. And it is amazing how much more you live in the present moment. It's wonderful, you know, rather than just looking for that selfie opportunity or for that, you know, photo opportunity. It's just fabulous.
Yeah, and it's
get so much more out of it by not putting it in the public eye and doing it for other people. Right. Yeah. What I've done with mine, Gary. Now, what happened here? I realized I was making tiny stitches at the end, but actually I thought, do you know, I really like that, because it's like, it's just sort of disappearing. It's like a design element that the
yes. So that's because you've been to the festivals of quilts, and so you're starting to actually pull the thread in a little bit tighter to actually start to quilt the piece of felt. So that is what's rubbed off from you going to the Festival of Quilts, I think, because it's a lot of those things, like especially the hand quilt. You can hand quilt your you know, your finished work, and that would be how you would do it. Lots of tiny little running stitches through the layers to pull it in slightly tighter so you get that quilted effect, which is quite nice. All right. So,
okay.
So what have you got, another color or thickness? What have you got there, Rachel?
No, I haven't at the moment, but I can easily find one because I've got lots of threads. So you crack on with yours, and I'll
Okay, so
thread up another.
we're now going to reverse the spiral. So we're going to start from where we almost like where we finished. So rather than starting from the center, and we're just going to almost like shadow. So it's going to be a bit easier because we've got something to follow. It's almost like following in someone else's track. So you're backtracking now. So you're going to then follow your spiral back to the beginning. So you're just going to, again, you're going to start where you finish. You're going to come out. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to the last stitch, I'm going to come through. I've put a knot, and this thread is slightly thicker. It could be another color, so you could do it another color. But the idea is now it's a bit more helpful. You actually got to now mirror exactly in the thicker thread the stitches that you've previously done. So you've got to now be a little bit apart. So I'll just start it off so you can see what I'm doing. So you're going to be by the side of it. So you're going to come to the side of those stitches, and you're going to try and mirror. And you see, I've got my little stitches here, and now I'm just running along the side with the thicker thread or another color, and I'm just going to mirror it as I go around. I'm going to try and match the same amount of stitches and the same distances. So again, you're concentrating on trying to get it as sort of even as possible. Again, do not worry if you're suddenly like, oh, I've gone wrong. That doesn't matter. That's fine. There you are. I'm just going to go around. If I get to that point, I can stop and show you again. Can you see how I'm just almost the same size stitches, but I'm just going to come around here and I'm going to continue all the way around until I get to the middle and see if I can get exactly the same amount of stitches, see if it all goes round. And again, it is like it's exactly how you would do when you've got a pen and paper when you're doodling. You know, we're still talking, I'm still talking while I'm doing it. You can have conversations with people while you're sat there doing this, but it's just a nice little way of just relaxing into it and just creating patterns, but also practicing a skill, improving on your sewing skills, learning a new skill. Maybe you've never done any sewing like this before, and maybe you want to have a go and have a try. And the most easiest stitch to do is just a very simple running stitch.
Yeah, and I tell you, it was amazing. At the Festival of Quilts, there was a lady who won first prize in the novice category, and you've got to have less than 2 years experience.
Right.
She had only gone to a sewing class once and made a blanket, and then the prize, the quilt she made then, the one, was the most incredible quilt you have ever seen, with trapunto and flowers, and oh my goodness,
wow,
how and that's actually on our there's a great tour this morning of the Festival of Quilts with a chap called John Cole Morgan, and it's on our Crafty Monkeys Instagram, and it will remain there if anybody wants to see it. Right, so I've got my thread, and I'm just looking at where you started. So you're going back inwards, okay?
Yes, so I've started down here, Rachel. So I've literally come out where I went in at the back here. Yeah. I've gone to the side of it and I've gone in with my thread here. So I'm going back on myself, and yeah. I'm matching each width of the stitch and like as I go round. So I'm where there's this thick one or the thin one to start with, I've done a thicker one and I've gone all the way around. So you've got to try. You might not get it exactly, but you've got to try and marry or match up exactly the same as you go back and get back to the center. Okay.
Yeah.
You're saying about the Festival of Quilts that you've just been to. I mean, I followed the Sewing Bee this season, Sewing Bee 23, and one of the young girls that got to the finalists, there was 3 finalists into the, you know, when they do the final, and one of the young girls there, I mean, amazing. She'd only taught herself to sew during lockdown. Yeah. And she got herself right to the final against people that have been doing sewing for many years. And she, I mean, basically really had taught herself just by little tutorials like what we're doing now online, you know, just doing little tutorials and then having a go practicing. But she actually got herself all the way to one of the final 3 in the program, which is amazing, really good. And again, only a young girl, you know, she was doing it from her bedroom at her parents' house. She was sewing in her bedroom. It was just brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, she's obviously passionate about it. And I think that if you're passionate and you enjoy something, you know, you'll go far with it. Just talking about young people as well, at the Festival of Quilts Gallery, there was a there's always a section for the younger quilters. And there was, I think it was age 9, no, it was actually age 5 to 14, and they had different sections. And what these kids had created was just amazing. But what was so impressive for me was it was so lovely to see that they had these kids wanted to sew. You know, these are all things that our grandmas used to. I mean, I've talked so often to experts like you, Gary. It was the grandma in the family, you know, or the mom. I know Zach Foster's grandma was hugely influential to him. She just passed away at age 108. But you know, these people were so influential, and it is sad that in today's generation, you know, these skills are not being passed on.
No, and I mean, maybe the opportunities, you know, we need to see those opportunities, like we mentioned about earlier. We were talking about someone that would have liked to have come to one of the classes, but she's looking after her grandchildren on that day.
Yes.
Well, you know, hopefully, I mean, obviously she had an interest in sewing and things like that, that she is on those days when you have the opportunity to have the grandchildren or looking after someone else's child. If you have got any skills, it doesn't just have to be sewing. It could be any creative skill, from cookery, painting, drawing, even music. It's actually just show them, you know, don't force it down children's necks, but just give them, say, look, have a go, pick this up, you can have a go. I mean, young people they are like absorbing little sponges, and they are interested, they are inquisitive, especially if you turn the telly off or the computer off and just say, well, but I'm bored. Well, actually, come over here and have a look what I'm doing here. What do you reckon? Do you want to have a go? Do you want to pick this tool up? Do you want to have a go mixing this? Or, you know, that's how I got started on everything. It was like, you know, maybe there wasn't the distractions, but I definitely had, you know, an inquisitive mind, and I was allowed to, rather than, oh, no, don't get in the way or don't take up my time. It was like, no, if you want to have a go, here you are, have a go, sit next to me and have a little play. So I think that's the sort of like what we need to also promote when we are sort of like trying to encourage more younger people to get creative. And how do we do it? It is our responsibility as older adults to do that. I've got to the middle. I'm quite happy with that.
Nearly there. I'll show you mine in a second. Yeah, I mean, also as well, just talking about, you know, little children, it's so important with dexterity to do things with their little fingers. That's why writing is so good for them when they're young. You know, they're not writing novels, they're just practicing writing letters. Yes, to learn to write, but also for their dexterity. I mean, we've said it often on our channel, Gary, that, you know, we've got so many, I mean, children could do this supervised, obviously you're working with a needle, but so we've got so many tea time tutorials that kids could absolutely get involved with, because what we're doing is we're taking ourselves back to primary school when we played, because when you're at primary school, play is so important. Teachers know this. That's why you're given a sandpit. It's not all learning to write, you know, it's about play, and that's what we do. So for anybody with children, I would encourage them to definitely have a look on the old tea time tutorial playlists, because there are plenty of exercises there that children can absolutely get involved with, but that you'll enjoy as well. Show now, and you can see. Have a guess what I chose, Gary.
Hang on, let's have a look. Oh, I like the pink. Again, Rachel, the pink is the complementary colour to green.
Yes, that's why
that's nice.
Yeah, so I think I've got maybe one more stitch to do.
Just through the middle.
Is that. So through there. Love that pink on there.
And what we're going to do is we're just going to finish the back off. So flip it over on the back, and we'll just do that knot again. So probably on this one, you'll see a little bit clearer. So I'm just going to non-dominant hand. You've still got the needle and the thread in this hand. So I'm holding it here. I'm going to go through, loop through underneath like so. So I'm creating a knot. So you can see I've created a knot. Put your finger down on it and just pull it tight to the fabric. Not pull it all the way, you know, not pull it tight away from it, but just give a little knot to there. One knot on the thicker thread might be enough, but let's do another one. I'm just going to hold it again in my left hand through the loop with the needle, and then tie it, and then close the loop, leaving your finger on there like that, and then you can just cut away And that's a really good way of just sort of finishing it off. So if anyone has never done a knot on the back before, you can tidy up the back. You can give it a press if you want to. You can stick it in your little book. You can make a little book, make a little page from it. And as I say, you can have a look at how to download the book. If you go to the Crafty Monkeys website, there's a whole series of workshops on how to create this lovely book, but that's just one of them. I think we will return. I can see myself returning to this book for one more tutorial at some point in the next month or so, and maybe we'll have a look at doing some other decorative stitch that you might quite enjoy, using running stitch and just weaving in and out like we did with this one. But I'm going to do that another day.
I think that's a great idea. We should definitely.
Yeah.
So there you go, a lovely mindful exercise. And you know what we say about this channel is that we are not trying to teach anybody, you know, I mean, well, on the rest of the channel, there are some very serious sewing techniques. If you want to make blocks, if you want to make traditional blocks, if you want to make lovely, Gary has got one on there, a sort of a case with, you know, you can put brushes in and things. I mean, there are all sorts of projects and amazing things that you can learn for free on our channel. But our tea time tutorials are for people, either those people who are making those wonderful things, who have not thought about mindfulness and sewing and put it together, or for people who have just never, you know, tried anything like this and just want to give themselves a creative break every week and don't know where to start. Just log into our tea time tutorials. I mean, there's a lady called Michelle in Scotland. Hello, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
She started working with us a few weeks ago, and she's made her way through all of the tea time tutorials. She's watched them all, and she just loves them, and looks forward now to every Friday. And we do load every Friday. So, but thank you to you, lovely Gary. As I've said, we are looking to try and get some guests on with us, actually. So we will have some guests coming on soon to do some crafting with us. But it's always lovely to have your company, lovely YouTuber. Have a look and list. Come back next Friday. There'll be another one. And just sit down and do a bit of mindful stitching. It's amazing how calming and lovely it is. Okay, see you next time. Bye.
Bye.